do need to address the diet, lifestyle, stop smoking, stop doing several other things that we know are bad, reduce obesity, and all these things need to be done. And one of the things that came out recently, which I was really very interested in, it was a study showing that exercise really improves the outcome of colorectal cancer. And that's fascinating, because I remember being in a big meeting on tumor immunology. It was over 10 years ago, and a fellow presented a mouse experiment where they had mice with the tumors, and the mice, the poor fellows, had to do this compulsory exercise on a wheel, the way they run around on the wheel. And they split these mice into that. And he was very excited. He said, the mice, that's what we've got to capture now, as opposed to, oh, this is a disaster, etc., which is the natural reaction initially. But I must say that I'm quite proud of the cancer world, because we have improved the outcome of cancers dramatically since when I was even a registrar. And, you know, the thing I'm most proud of, in spite of all the HIV and the vaccines and immunotherapy, was a period in my life when I was doing the general medicine bit. And I had this terrible woman with one of the most dreadful autoimmune diseases known, who was steroid resistant. And I had remembered that a similar case had been reported as a single case as responding to thalidomide, which was given to them to help them sleep, because that's what it was used for pregnant women. Then they realized this disaster they were causing, the birth defects. But I remembered it had this effect. So I gave it to this woman, and she had a fantastic recovery, having been reduced. She was like a skeleton because she couldn't eat or drink. She had mouth ulcers everywhere. It's just absolutely awful. And to see this woman recover within 48 hours after giving thalidomide made me shout and say, don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. And I tried to get backing to go into this. The Wellcome turned me down, the MRC turned me down, the CRUK, what it was then, to all turn me down on the grounds, don't we realize this drug causes severe side effects? We cannot possibly get involved with birth defects. I said, well, don't you realize that I'm an oncologist and every drug I use will cause birth defects if I'm stupid enough to give them to a pregnant woman? What bit do you not get? Well, fortunately, my fury was brought to the attention of some people who knew about thalidomide, working in a startup company in America. Anyway, the bottom line is, I said, I'd love to work with them on this, but thalidomide, I'm not worried about birth defects. I'm worried about if you use it for 2 months or more, you get very bad neuropathy. And I was showing you needed to keep giving it to get the benefit. So anyhow, I finally persuaded them, it took 2 years, to make analogues. That means you take the thalidomide and you tweak it here and you screen. Long story short, at any rate, out of this, we had a fantastic drug, ticked all the boxes. That drug's now called lenalidomide and is used worldwide, and has been the most important drug in increasing the survival of multiple myeloma from 2 years to 7 years. And that is an incredible improvement. So going into cancer actually is very, very exciting. And I actually have some personal friends who are taking it as maintenance treatment. And it's a great feeling to think if it wasn't for my persistence, that drug wouldn't have been around. So it's so this is what you have to keep driving forward. There is a great thing if I don't do something and it's not going to get done. And that's what keeps people like me at my old age still flying the whip about trying to improve everything, because for the training at the moment, it's far too specialized. And what that means, that the clinical trials have to be, they're made to be big, and all the research is big pharma driven. which is why what I call, in many other ones, even pancreatic cancer, we did a randomized study which showed it did improve the outcome of pancreatic cancer. And when we tried to get CRUK to help us with this, because there was no big company, their attitude was kind of, well, if it's important, you'd have a big pharma behind. And then if you did, then we'll collaborate with them. And I said, you raise millions and millions and millions of pounds a year off poor, unsuspecting public with give us your money TV adverts, dreadful thing. And they're telling us you basically just exist to subsidize big pharma to make big profits. I mean, that's the way I interpreted this interaction.
Tell me there, you touched on immunology. Tell us a little bit more about that, because my understanding is immunology is about the immune system, which is protecting the body from outside attacks, and cancer comes from within, from the cells within. So how does immunology fit into the conversation on cancer, or does it not really?
Well, it does completely. That's the other thing I was told by senior colleagues, that the immune system had absolutely nothing to do with cancer. For years and years and years I was told this. And I started to get very suspicious of this over the years. HIV kind of confirmed it, because when the HIV wrecked the immune system, cancers popped up. Lymphoma, for instance, Kaposi's, CA cervix, they all came out when the immune system went down. But most importantly, Gene Shearer, who I think is the best immunologist I've ever come across in the world, he's long since retired. Basically, we started looking at the immune response in people with cancer. And he did lymphomas and glioma. I did melanoma and colorectal. And the colorectals were just unbelievable, because we had very interested people at St. George's who wanted to do some research. And we found that if you have colorectal cancer and it's early, we could still detect really marked immune suppression. And the reason that this changed my approach to everything is when you removed it surgically, so there was no cancer left, and you measured the immune response, it would bounce up all by itself after it was removed. The only conclusion with that simple experiment is the cancer caused the immune suppression. Now, we could get over that by just cutting out the colon cancer. Now, I got interested in this because the majority of my melanoma patients, we couldn't cut all the cancer out. So that told me you had to boost the immune response that these tumors were suppressing before you were going to get anywhere, to get in a level field. And that's basically what we showed. And we improved the outcome dramatically by boosting the innate immune response. So the new immunotherapies are antibody-based, and they're not targeted, as people always start talking about targeting cancer. No, they're not. What they're doing is taking the brakes off the immune system that's been suppressed by the cancer, which is why in certain situations they can lead to complete responses. It was very good in melanoma. Lung, there's about 23 different cancer types respond to this type of immunotherapy now. And why? They have very bad side effects, because there's no direction. They take the brakes off the immune responses that would attack you but are being normally controlled. We would love to have a mechanism whereby you could take the brakes off everything that would get rid of the cancer and not give you the side effects. I believe that's within the realms of possibility. A couple of things that we're working on can reduce that sort of side effect profile, but that's the that's the concept. With regards to what causes cancer, people always say, what causes cancer? Well, the first thing is having the wrong parents and grandparents, and your genetic hand of cards you get given. I mean, that's just one of those things. But then what causes it, and this is what I came out of my research into HIV. How does HIV cause this immune suppression? It never caused immune suppression unless you had immune genes that reacted to to the virus in a non-specific way. So as a big inflammatory. And then we realized that when you have inflammation, you get automatic immune suppression and lots of growth factors which cancer can take advantage of. So I have written books, and lots of chapters and co-edited books on the role of chronic inflammation in the development of cancer. And when you think of all the long-term ones, they're all associated with chronic inflammation. Everything from the mouth, esophagus, stomach is due to chronic inflammation from smoking and bad food. Everything that's in the lung, particularly, we know is a strong association with smoking and other bad inhaled things such as asbestos, etc. The asbestos is very interesting because the chronic inflammation, which you can tell if you happen to be looking at someone exposed to asbestos by chance, induces a very low-grade chronic inflammation that might take 40 years before you get the mesothelioma. Now, at the other end, the colon, for instance, a very common cancer, it's much more likely to arise in chronic inflammatory processes. And these include ulcerative colitis, I knew that as a medical student, Crohn's, and polyps. And polyps are basically an inflammatory lesion leading to an adenoma, and if you don't cut it out, it will go malignant. So if it wasn't for the chronic inflammation, this process wouldn't happen.
Tom, there have been a lot, I think, especially in the US, there's been a lot of talk about alternative ways of treating cancer. I don't know whether this has only been more recent because many of us are now plugged into alternatives during the COVID time when we were told one thing and that was it. Well, we look for other alternatives. But certainly in the US, there's been a lot of talk on certainly ivermectin. That was kind of during the COVID time. But then also fembendazole and mebendazole. Those three have come up a lot as I've looked into this. How do you see that from a UK perspective? Are these drugs that are they drugs that haven't been studied for this? What's your perspective on that and these type of drugs being discussed as options?
Well, my take in the UK, it's not taken seriously by oncology at the moment. Looking at ivermectin, I've looked at a lot of drugs. I mentioned thalidomide. We've looked at CBD, artemisinin, all these, and found that they all have anti-cancer activity of some sort. Ivermectin has many different anti-cancer mechanisms, and as such is a very good candidate to take through and explore. And again, people don't seem to want to do this. Remember, ivermectin is given to millions of people worldwide. One of the reviews I read suggested it saves 2 million people a year from blindness because it kills these plagues. The other drugs, which are similar but different, mebendazole and febendazole, they are also used for parasites and what have you, and they have crossover links. Now, I remember years ago, people from South America presenting that they could treat breast cancer and other cancers very successful using a concoction of these anti-parasitics. Well, what you're seeing now is people using these in cases where other conventional therapy is not working. And the responses, I must say at the moment, are anecdotal. The good thing is ivermectin has very, very few side effects, up to several times more than the normal recommended dose. Febendazole have potential liver toxicity, so intermittent use is strongly recommended. A concoction using both of them is sort of widespread in people who are interested in extending out the efficacy of treatment of cancers, particularly those that we can treat but they come back all the time. And so what I think we need to do, these drugs do not carry the big profit margin. What I think we need to do, and this is the sort of thing NHS should be doing, and I hope like the NIH, etc., is doing studies on this. Is this real? We'll pay for the studies. Don't wait to the drug company. Comes along and do the studies and it's treated 1 week, and you can get rid of 99% of all known worms. In oncology, they're using 1 milligram per kilogram, which means instead of using 12, you'd be doing 70 to 140, whatever, every day. So these are incredibly high doses compared to what we use. And in my laboratory work, I've been really impressed that many drugs are actually much better used intermittently. And it's the withdrawal period you get the anti-cancer effect, not the constant exposure. So we need to put that into the trial, which we know it's a good anti-cancer agent because there's been a lot of work on it. We don't know how to use it properly. And that's what we need trials do. Are we better off? I did a tour with Paul Marek. We're both very interested in this. Are we better off using ivermectin intermittently at more normal doses and adding in mebendazole for bendazole, or increasing the dose continuously of the ivermectin? Now, I mean, I've met people who've done the latter, but still not really had anything you could call a response. So we're in a very grey area, but it needs formal studies that are conducted by clinical academics, which we've actually been completely eliminated by a big pharma will tell us what to do philosophy that the NHS seems to have adopted.
Yeah, because I've read, certainly in the US, that the cost of chemotherapy can be $100,000 and more. I don't know if that's per year or per dose. I don't know how it works cost here, but then I guess that means there's no incentive to do research on some of these more generic drugs that may come in at a fraction of that cost.
Well, that's right. I mean, majority of immunotherapy of the drugs that I've worked with, I'm horrified to find that patients go privately and they have to pay for it. They're costing $6-7 grand every 3 weeks. Now, the NHS doesn't get much of a discount on that. They say it's all confidential. But I do know a retired head of one of these major giant big pharma companies told me that he loved dealing with the NHS because they assumed that they were getting a very good deal because we're British. And he said it is so easy he didn't have to negotiate hardly at all. And that is one of the problems of the NHS. It is unbelievably incompetent and corrupt all the way through. And, people say, you can't say these things. And I said, well, I've just said them. If you look at the newspaper yesterday, you'd have seen 4 senior managers jailed for a massive part in the corruption of doing contracts for IT and things like that. And the word here that makes the big difference is this was only discovered through chance. Well, any big organization should have enough checks and controls, so this would be impossible. No, not with the NHS and many other government bodies, I'm afraid.
Can I finish off just with talking about vaccines? A lot of concerns, a lot of evidence seems to point at the rise of cancer, especially turbo cancer, linked to the COVID jab, especially the mRNA. And yet we're told we'll have a super duper mRNA cancer vaccine that will actually fix it all. Where does the truth lie in that? Is mRNA vaccine, is that the holy grail, or is that just fixing the problems that have initially been caused by the original vaccine?
Well, yeah, the latter is a good thing. But I can assure you, after doing several decades, the messenger RNA wants to target tumor antigens, and they're boasting they can plug it in and have a vaccine very quick. Now, I was head of the Institute Cancer Vaccines before it was merged into Institute Cancer Vaccines and Immunotherapy, and I took part in at least a dozen trials with the cancer vaccine. So we had MARCH, MART, NY-ESO. These were all going to be targeting these things would kill the tumor. No, just like chemo resistance, you target the tumor antigen, cancer antigen on a tumor cell with incoming missiles, the cancer is going to down regulate that thing. So it's within 3 months it's not on the tumor, and the tumor's powering ahead. So I mean that is quite an incredible thing to do. I think it's going to have a very limited role, and I think we should not be using messenger RNA technology for this. And I can tell you that I have gone through and read at least 13 mechanisms whereby messenger RNA vaccines can induce or promote cancer. I mean, it's unbelievable. Only one of those 13 reasons is a reason good enough to ban them immediately, but to have 13. Now, the rise of the turbo cancers, the new cancers we're seeing in young people, you will see every day that when this is out there being discussed, the newspapers will say, oh, this is clearly due to diet or other environmental things. And the thing that really gets me in the newspapers that have comments from the readers online, they have these articles, and I always read the comments first, because the person would never even have mentioned vaccines. You go on everything but the vaccine. And the first comment will be, so nothing to do with the fact that this only occurred a couple of months after the vaccines were induced then. Why no comment on this when many... And then sometimes they mention me when I've been screaming about this is the cause of it for ages. Why didn't you mention this? And we all know there's been tremendous censorship from the government. I mean, I've been told by editors and producers alike that the government has regards it as a crime to say or do or discuss anything that might make people lose confidence in the vaccines. Well, if a vaccine doesn't work and it's dangerous, I think, and I would say, no, we must not be using these, particularly in young people, because they're aware that these things are highly dangerous. And what I was very pleased about, the Mail on Sunday did an article a few weeks ago where they let me and James Royal point out that these vaccines are causing the cancer, and we have seen it. I mean, they've been unbelievable. We're seeing cancers relapse that have been stable. We're seeing brand new cancers present stage 4 in people fit and healthy. And I did a big survey on this where I've seen dozens of patients. And the thing that strikes me was I was the only doctor with a GP, with a surgeon, with the oncologist, with everybody else who asked the question and said, can you tell me your vaccine history? Not one doctor had done it. And then those doctors will say, no, there's no association with the vaccine whatsoever. I see no ships. Where's the sand? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I've got no doubt at all these vaccines are causing cancer. And the more you have, the greater your risk will rise exponentially. And, the simple thing in that is that a booster vaccine suppresses your T-cell response. Well, that's the only response that's going to control your cancer. So that's then it gets worse. And when I was asked to about the fact, did I really believe this? And James Royal said we saw it. They have to balance it. Quite right. Very good. And so they got the experts and vaccines immunology from the places Imperial and things like that. And they all say something which is extremely correct. But the specious nature of their argument and the sophistry is it would be funny if it wasn't so serious. They all say Messenger RNA is very, very safe. We get exposed to tons of it every day, and it's all disposed of and causes no harm whatsoever. That fact is completely true. What they don't mention is it's so easily disposed with that in order for it to be a vaccine, we have to stabilize it so it doesn't get disposed of. Therein lies the problem, that the stabilization, these messenger RNA has been around. I was on a messenger RNA vaccine company board over 12 years ago. They still haven't had anything approved. So now you know where you're coming from. So the messenger RNA, in order to deliver it, is delivered in such a way it can easily end up integrating, and then it hacks your genetic code so that can then promote an oncogene, downregulate suppressor genes. I mean, the list goes on. It's horrendous. I mean, if you just see the one slide I had prepared for me of everything in the literature, by the time you get to the third thing, there should be stop out there, get rid of it. The whole thing should be put in the can. And the big problem is that there's a big industrial complex wants to make messenger RNA the big core of everything. And we fell for it in the UK. Sunak signed up to Moderna to make vaccines. I didn't see that ever go to tender, by the way. And I find it was identical in Australia. The same thing, they wanted $1 billion over 10 years. That you pay the money. It's like everything goes around. The government pays the money and you get nothing back for it. You know, it's absolutely outrageous. We have to kill this culture and actually increase the health of the population. So that's where we are.
Well, Professor Dalglish, I really appreciate you coming on, and you were, I think, really the only voice from a medical point of view, actually, who was able to be in mainstream newspapers, in your regular articles in the Daily Mail. There was a lot happening online discussion, but you actually breaking through in terms of the print media and putting it out. I think you were fairly unique. And I
mean, a lot of them will let me talk on all sorts of things. As soon as I mention the bad things of vaccines, I started to put things into the print, and there would be the press, and it wouldn't get published. Yeah. And I'd say, what's going on here? And they said, I mean, it was approved. I was told it would be out. The senior editor sees it and pulls it. And he pulls it because it says something negative about the vaccine. So he's worried about you play ball with us and you get your knighthood type of thing for telling these lies to the people, and you'll be rewarded. That's outrageous. I mean, I only appreciated this when I did an interview on Sky News Australia, which is a really big thing.
Yes.
You may not know my voice, but you've surely seen my handiwork. I am Betsy Ross, an upholsterer, a widow, a patriot, and, as the story goes, the woman who stitched the first American flag.
So first, I just want to say Happy Independence Day to everybody. This Independence Day is an Independence Day unlike any before. Celebrate. So first, I just want to say Happy Independence Day to everybody. This Independence Day is an Independence Day unlike any before. Celebrating 250 years, right? You know, I look around all the social media posts and I see people so excited and so thankful to be in America where they can have freedom. No, I'm just going to say this. When you look back on everything that's happened in the last 4 to 8 years, I don't know how you can say we've been free. Now, first, I want to say that to all the brave men and women who have sacrificed everything to fight for our freedom, thank you. To those fighting right now and to the ones we lost and their families. But first of all, if people can't see the veil that has been pulled over our eyes from the slavery that we've been captured in, I'm talking about the royal families. I'm talking about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Federal Reserve banking system, the trafficking cabal that has ruined so many innocent lives, pedophiles destroying lives. The amount of slavery that has kept us all in chains in this matrix is nuts. Now, with the negative part being out of the way, let me say this, that there's going to come a time when everyone right now who's out there saying, man, I'm so thankful to be alive in America because I'm free. I'm free. I want you to remember one thing. Save this moment. Save this video. And remember that there will be a time when you realize there was an operation going on for a very long time. And in 2017, that operation called Q asked Donald J. Trump to fulfill a position. He fulfilled a position in 2017. Moving forward as our commander-in-chief in a war that you have nothing, like no clue about. Through executive orders and many, many other continuity of government, many, many other things. There will come a time when the world will realize that Donald J. Trump stepped in to fulfill a position that I don't know if anybody else could. God appointed him to fulfill his position, to bring back this country, to bring back America, and most of all, to restore our sovereignty and restore freedom. I gotta say this, I don't think I've ever been free. Not when I'm enslaved by a cabal criminal syndicate. Not when I'm enslaved by a bankrupt corporation with fake money. And not when I'm enslaved by a ruling group of families around the world that thought they were going to win. They thought they had us. I'll tell you this, if it wasn't for Donald J. Trump and the Q Alliance and God, we'd be in FEMA camps with guillotines, probably 15-minute cities eating bugs right now. Population control. They thought they had us. But you know what? God won. And I tell you what, one day everyone's going to look back on Donald J. Trump and then look back on this Q operation. And we're really going to be thankful. Most of all, be thankful that they brought freedom back. Real freedom. Love y'all. So first, I just want to say happy 250.
You may not know my voice.
I did not seek greatness. I only sought to fulfill my duties. My name is William Whipple of New Hampshire. I was born a merchant, became a general, and signed the Declaration not for fame, but for freedom. At Saratoga, I witnessed the British surrender, but I did not see it as a moment to gloat. Victory is not a parade. It is a responsibility. We had won a battle, yes. The real measure was whether we could prove worthy of the cause we had declared. In my letters, I shared my hope that slavery would end, and so I myself freed Prince, who was my own servant. How could I fight for liberty and deny it at home? Even as